an image of 20 skydivers excitedly aboard a World War II bomber aircraft preparing for a jump from a spectacular altitude. They were full of enthusiasm and passion, but couldn't anticipate that this flight would become the most horrific disaster in the history of sport skydiving. While the aircraft was climbing, the 20 people continued diligently preparing for the exciting jump. However, the weather began to deteriorate, with dense cloud layers covering the entire sky. That's an unbreakable rule: never jump if you can. But perhaps their excitement made them forget all dangers, and they recklessly plunged into the abyss, leading to a heartbreaking outcome.
Before getting into the main content, I hope everyone will help Hog TV with a like and follow for our channel so we can reach more people.
Now let's explore what happened during the historic jump at Lake Erie. The incident occurred on August 28, 1967, when a group of about 30 skydiving enthusiasts gathered at Ordner Airport in Ohio to participate in a free flight sponsored by a volunteer organization.
This was a rare opportunity to jump from a modified bomber aircraft at an altitude of 6,000 meters.
Skydiving was a relatively new sport in America at that time, so fans of the sport were always eager to experience record-breaking jumps. However, the medium-sized B-25 Mitchell bomber had limited seating capacity. Therefore, the pilot decided to prioritize only the most experienced individuals. This meant about 10 people couldn't join this flight. T have known that the pilot Initially, the flight was delayed due to thick clouds, but it finally took off in the late afternoon with 20 skydivers on board. According to plan, 18 of them would jump at 6,000 meters right above Ordner Airport, while the remaining 2 would jump from 9,000 meters when the aircraft circled back.
But unfortunately, everything unfolded according to a completely different scenario due to being obscured by dense cloud layers.
The pilot had to rely on Cleveland Air Traffic Control for confirmation and flight guidance. And then, right after the bomber took off, a single-engine Cessna 180 also departed from the same airport.
Initially, the Cessna pilot intended to observe the skydiving from the ground, but he changed his mind after meeting a friend who was also a skydiver. Someone who had wanted to join the flight but was denied due to lack of space. So, the two decided to take photos together from about 3,600 meters altitude.
Returning to the B-25,
it took off at 3 p.m., slowly and laboriously. At this altitude, the outside temperature ranged from -49 to -34 degrees Celsius. Since the aircraft wasn't insulated and had no heating system,
many skydivers had to wear additional underwear and shoes beneath their jumpsuits. A small detail that would later contribute to the horrific tragedy. While the B-25 was climbing, the pilot contacted Cleveland Radio to determine Ordner Airport's location and continued flying toward the drop zone.
In the 1960s, the Global Positioning System, GPS, hadn't been invented yet, so pilots completely depended on high-frequency radio signals, abbreviated as VHS, for navigation.
According to court documents related to the incident, both aircraft contacted air traffic control within a 2-minute interval, reporting they were flying over or near Cleveland Radio. The B-25 pilot called first and received guidance from radar control personnel. At this point, he should have been about 10 kilometers from the drop zone at Ordner Airport. However, the Cessna was flying at 3,600 meters toward Cleveland Radio. Not seeing the B-25 and had contacted air traffic control to confirm its position. Unfortunately, air traffic control only detected a single target on radar and informed the Cessna pilot that he might be flying about 10 kilometers behind the B-25.
But the reality was completely different.
It's regrettable that no one knew at the time that air traffic control had mistaken the Cessna for the B-25 on the radar screen, leading to incorrect positioning of the bomber.
The harsh reality was that the B-25 was flying over Lake Erie, about 20 kilometers from the intended drop zone.
Meanwhile, the B-25 pilot thought they were only about 5 kilometers away and began preparing for the jump. The first 18 skydivers planned to perform close formation freefall demonstrations.
To achieve this, they needed to jump almost simultaneously while maintaining minimum safe distance.
The pilot signaled the jump master, and within just 30 seconds all 18 people leapt from the aircraft, beginning their performance.
But immediately, they realized there was a thick wall of clouds below them.
Due to poor lighting and limited space in the aircraft cabin, they couldn't clearly observe the situation below beforehand.
Nevertheless, they continued free-falling according to plan to deploy their parachutes at about 760 meters altitude right above Werner Airport.
But those 18 people didn't know they were plunging into an abyss. At the same time, the Cessna pilot was also trying to locate the skydiving group,
still thinking the V-25 was nearby.
But unfortunately, neither the aircraft nor the skydiving group were present at the supposed drop zone location.
The 18 people continued free-falling, and just minutes later they broke through the big cloud layer at about 1,200 meters altitude.
At this moment, a terrifying truth appeared before their eyes.
They were about 6.5 kilometers from the shoreline and completely lost direction toward their airport. In that life or death moment, they only had a few brief seconds to make survival decisions.
The countdown began. They only had 3.5 minutes to prepare for impact with the water and begin the fight for survival. They quickly removed their shoes, big jackets, and anything that could make them sink in the water. From the ground, witnesses saw colorful parachutes opening in the sky.
Next, the parachutists fell into the water one after another in a straight line as if it were a pre-planned maneuver.
Noticing the emergency, an off-duty Coast Guard rescue worker immediately launched a rescue operation with nearby boats. Bad weather and rough seas with waves nearly 1.2 meters high made the rescue efforts even more difficult.
Meanwhile, high above, the B-25 aircraft continued to circle, completely unaware of the tragedy unfolding below. The crew suggested climbing to 9,000 meters altitude for the remaining 2 parachutists to make their jump, but the request was denied.
However, the pilot did not give up. He flew the plane toward the Cleveland radio station, and after resetting the course, the remaining 2 parachutists safely jumped into the intended area at Werner Airport, 20 minutes after the fateful jump of their 18 friends.
Meanwhile, before the V-25 landed safely, the crew remained completely unaware that their 18 friends were falling one by one in a life and death struggle.
In the freezing cold water, parachutists Bernard Johnson and Robert Cole were desperately trying to remove their heavy equipment before sinking deeper. They struggled amidst the waves, trying to grab onto anything that could keep them afloat. Ironically, the remaining equipment on their bodies made it harder for them to stay above water. They began to exhaust, despairing, thinking all hope was lost, until a civilian fishing boat appeared in the distance. The boat headed straight toward them, and luckily, the 2 men were pulled onto the boat
just as they were sinking underwater.
It must be said this was a miracle, as they were the only 2 survivors of the horrific accident. Though extremely happy to be saved, the 2 couldn't stop agonizing over the fate of their friends. One of them even recounted that while floating on the water, he saw a nearby ship with a tall radio antenna. He saw a man standing on the deck looking directly at him. However, despite his attempts to call for help, the ship passed by him at a distance of less than 20 meters.
To this day, no one knows the identity of the man on that mysterious ship.
Many believe he might have been engaged in illegal activities and didn't want to get involved in the rescue. The 2 survivors believe that if that man had been willing to help, even just saving one person or sending a distress signal, the fishing boat could have reached more people before it was too late. On the lake surface, old parachutes, jumpsuits, safety lines, and helmets floated adrift, but not a single person was in sight. The initial rescue team only found 2 bodies, but the full brutality of the accident had not yet been revealed. In the following days, Lake Erie gradually returned 16 bodies of the unfortunate parachutists. 1 month later, the National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, concluded the B-25 pilot and FAA air traffic controller were primarily responsible for the accident.
However, the parachutists themselves also bore responsibility for their carelessness despite having experience.
As a result, the pilot's aircraft license was revoked indefinitely. And in 1972,
The FAA was found at fault and had to compensate the families of 16 victims in a wrongful death lawsuit. After this tragic event, the United States Parachute Association changed its rules,
limiting jumps within 80 kilometers of any body of water unless the parachutist is equipped with protective gear. And to this day, the Lake Erie tragedy remains the deadliest parachuting accident in history. As for you, what do you think about this story? Please share your thoughts in the comments section. And before you leave, don't forget to follow the next episodes of Kanha TV to explore more real incidents from around the world. For now, goodbye and see you in the next videos.
If the veil stirred, subscribe and meet the next encounter.